So once again, guys, thanks again for joining the webinar today. Really excited to have you join us to talk about one of our most recent apps released in the App Store, Ampify. I'm joined by the Ampify co-founders today. They are both in the webinar with us, so we'll be learning a lot about their product, what they have to offer, and the integration into Duda. Cool. We can go next slide. By way of brief introduction, I'm Everett Morgan. I am the Partner Success Engineer here at Duda, basically responsible for integrating new and working with existing integrations in the App Store. And I work very closely with the Ampify folks to get them integrated into Duda. Omer, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Omer. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Ampify. I'll explain more in a bit. Maybe you should go over the agenda, Everett.
Yeah, so here's our agenda today, guys. It's kind of jam-packed. First, we're going to obviously learn about who Ampify is, what they do, and kind of a little bit more about their company. Then we're going to learn about the AMP framework itself. You know, what is it? Why did Google build it? What benefits does it provide to users and developers? Then we're going to jump straight into the benefits itself, kind of a more deeper drill down into the actual tangible benefits you'll see from implementing AMP on your site. We'll go into a live demo, which is going to take up the most of the presentation. And then lastly, at the end, we'll come back for some Q&A if you guys have any that pop up during the presentation. So jam-packed agenda, we'll be talking a lot about AMP and how Ampify implements that for Duda sites in the App Store.
Okay, so this is me, Everett, right?
Yep.
Great, so thank you very much. I can share with the participants that, as you mentioned, we have worked together on this integration for a good few months now because it is so intensive engineering-wise. So naturally, we're very excited to be at this moment where we can enable the Duda partners and customers to really have their go at AMP acceleration. So as I said, my name is Omer. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Ampify. As the name suggests, Ampify is an AMP management platform. We are being used by websites in order to create and manage their AMP assets, which in turn are being used to improve their page speed as well as their search rank results. We've been around since 2019 and we're a team of 7. Our customers consist mainly of news and content websites. And now with this integration with Duda, we are moving forward to serve SMBs as well. Today, we manage over 2 million live AMP web pages, and we're based out of Tel Aviv, Israel. I'm going to invest a good portion of this webinar explaining AMP, what it is and its benefits before moving on to the app, which by then will be very simple to understand. So AMP stands for Accelerated Mobile Pages. It is a new emerging type of web pages, websites, which are built out of different building blocks compared to traditional HTML. And those building blocks make them extremely fast and very SEO optimized compared to HTML. AMP was launched by Google, who still continues to push it very strongly. And Google also stands behind many of the benefits that only AMP pages enjoy from. And the result is that of the big websites online, the top 10,000 websites online, AMP is already being used by 20%. However, as we go down the size of websites, the AMP adoption also goes down. And the main reason for that is that AMP is very difficult to build and to maintain. So only the big guys that have the resources can really invest in it and enjoy the benefits. Fortunately, this is exactly what we now enable you to provide for your customers. So I want to go over the benefits that AMP brings about. And the first benefit is page acceleration or page speed. Before explaining how page acceleration works in AMP, I want to show you how it looks. We have a short clip here that shows 2 pages, one an AMP page, in this case from CNN.com, and the other, the HTML version of that same web page. Both pages are being loaded from within the mobile search results. And I want you to look at what happens when the user clicks to open the page. And the AMP is loaded. The AMP has actually finished loading before the HTML drew its first image. That is how fast AMP pages really are. And there are two factors that stand at the base of this page acceleration. The first one is that generally AMP pages are much more lightweight compared to HTML, and lightweight pages simply load faster. However, the bulk of the acceleration comes from the fact that AMP pages are being preloaded to the user's device before the user had even clicked to open the page. So by the time the click actually takes place, the page loads near instantly, just like you saw. On the graph here, we can see a comparison between an actual HTML page, the AMP version of that same web page, and finally, the AMP version preloaded as it does to the actual visitors. And you can see that using the AMP acceleration, we can cut off about 75% of the loading time. In this case, a precious 3 seconds of loading time. And that actually takes me to the next benefit, which is the saving of lost visitors or the reducing of bounce rate. We all know how crucial it is to have web pages load as fast as possible. And that's even more emphasized when we're talking about pages which serve as landing pages, taking visitors from the outside. After just 5 seconds of loading time, we lose nearly 40% of the visitors to our site. And those are actual visitors, actual sales that instead of going to your site, they will move on to Joe's site. And those are lost visitors. And one way we can try to compensate for that is to increase the marketing budget by an additional 40%. For some of us, it might be a few dozens of dollars a month. For others, a few thousands of dollars a month. A much simpler way and also more cost effective is to simply have your web pages load fast. And that is what AMP does extremely well. And simply by implementing AMP, you can reduce the bounce rate by 70%. Or in other words, increase the number of engaged visitors by an additional 30% on average. And this is, again, very significant and sourcing from the fact that AMP is so fast loading. The next benefit, for many, is the most beneficial benefit, and that is the improvement of SEO. Today, we have about 70% of all web traffic coming in from mobile. And for several years now, web pages have to be at least mobile adapted in order to have a chance to be visible in any realistic location in the search results. However, just 3 months ago, in May, Google have started rolling out their next step in this mobile evolution in the form of Core Web Vitals. Core Web Vitals is a set of signals which Google now measures that indicate on how mobile friendly a web page is. And today, if a web page is not very mobile friendly, it will be penalized in the search results. I will not go into each and every one of those individual signals that comprise Core Web Vitals. Suffice to say that both AMP and Core Web Vitals are both Google-owned technologies, that Google pushes in order to achieve the same goal, which is improving the mobile friendliness of the web. And for that reason, AMP is very beneficial is very optimized for improving of Core Web Vitals. And the result is that AMP pages gain, on average, 30% more search traffic compared to HTML pages. And interesting to note is that this measurement was taken before Core Web Vitals went live in the way it did 3 months ago. It would be interesting, and it is within our intentions, to take that measurement again and see if and by how much that gap has grown. Excuse me for a second. So summing up all those benefits, on one hand, the page speed and reduced bounce rate, and on the other, the improved SEO, we see that simply by implementing AMP into the website, we can expect to increase the number of engaged visitors in our site by anywhere from 50 to 70%. And that is how we should approach AMP evaluation when we think about using or not using AMP. We need to think about how much would it cost me to gain so many more visitors, and this is the value that AMP is expected to bring, simply by implementing it. Next, I want to quickly go over where AMP comes into play in the user journey in our site. You see, when a web page receives an AMP version, that AMP version actually doesn't replace the HTML version of the web page. It rather coexists alongside it. When that web page shows up in the mobile search results, it is the AMP version that shows up, bringing with it all the benefits that we just mentioned. However, when that same web page is being accessed from within the site itself, say by clicking on a button that leads to that page, it is the existing HTML version that loads up. So essentially what AMP does is to take an existing web page and without changing it at all, it expands its use case to be highly optimized to take more visitors from the outside and keep them engaged in the site for the goal of improving of SEO and bottom line results. So that's in 60 seconds how AMP comes into play on the site itself. Next, I want to discuss and show you how to measure the results of AMP and also how to convey the value of AMP to the site owners. So first, let's talk about how to explain AMP to the site owners. Many of them know SEO, Core Web Vitals, maybe even AMP, and they really understand it. However, most of them are interested in the bottom line results. Luckily, it's very easy to translate those benefits to the bottom line results. On one hand, we have the improved search rank, and that means more visitors that come into the site. On the other hand, we have the improved page speed or reduced bounce rate, which means that more of those visitors are being engaged, are kept engaged in the site and potentially converting into paying customers. And that's very easy to understand. And the results themselves are being measured using two approaches. The first approach, and the official approach, you might say, is using Google Search Console. And inside the Search Console, we have dedicated sections on which AMP takes effect. The AMP tab and the Core Web Vitals tab. And I want to focus on this tab because whenever an SEO person will look at your site, that would be the tab that they will open, and it will show that SEO person if your website is mobile friendly and is it going to be impacted in the search results, or is it going to be improved in the search results. In the Core Web Vitals tab, we have a distribution of all our site's web pages into those with poor Core Web Vitals results labeled in red, and those with green Core Web Vitals results labeled in green. I'm sorry, good Core Web Vitals results labeled in green. Our aspiration as site owners, and that is regardless of AMP, is for as many of our pages to be labeled as green, because that means that we are in a good location in terms of mobile friendliness, and we can expect for our search rank to be higher. Once you start working with AMP, all the pages that you create an AMP version for will be transferred into that green group. It's very uncommon for an AMP page to not receive a good Core Web Vitals result. And when you install AMP, those are the things that you should look for. However, we know that many of our customers, and maybe even us, don't always work with Google Search Console or understand those parameters. And our experience teaches us that many times the simplest way is also the most impactful. And that is to let the customers have their go at the AMP page. Simply see how fast it loads, like I showed you in the clip before. The reason is that those site owners know what to expect in terms of page speed. So when they see their AMP page loads so fast, they see what they get in return for their investment. So those are the results and how we measure them and what we expect to see once we set up an AMP with achieving the goal of more traffic and an improved page speed. I'm going to move on to the demo now and show you the application itself. I just want to say that AMP is a vast subject. And I have just touched the tip of the iceberg. And if you have any more questions, and I'm sure you will have that, we won't manage to answer everything in the webinar, feel free to see in the application itself the guides tab. It has many resources, and you can also, through the guides tab, reach out directly to us. We are very responsive, and we will answer any question that you have. Okay, so I'll be moving on to the demo now. Just give me a second. We have here a live AMP, I'm sorry, a Duda website on which we have already installed the AMP Faster website application. If we'll open this app, we see a dashboard, and the first screen shows us a list of all of our pages divided into two sections, the main pages and the blog posts pages. Each one of those pages starts at a status, and in this case, it's pending approval. Clicking on the page opens the single page view. And what we are being asked to do here is review the page and see that everything works and functions as expected. And the reason we're doing that is because this is an automated process and those pages will go live. So we want you to review it before it actually goes live. And this is the preview window. If we want to see a better view of the AMP page, we can click here to open it in a new tab. If we'll do it now, you'll notice that this tab was opened. However, this is desktop view. Since this is a mobile site, we need to switch into mobile view. If you don't know how to do that, it's very simple, and the instructions are linked right here below the button itself. So I'll quickly do it now and move into mobile view. And now we can see the page as the actual visitors will see and experience it. Another option that we have here is Speed Preview. Speed Preview opens a Google-owned tool which measures the site, see that it is AMP valid. I'm going to go over to the already ready page. And in this case, this is an AMP valid web page. And that means that it's good, okay? It gets all the AMP benefits. But what we're interested in right now is the preview results part. This will open up a page that will show us how our web page will be seen in the mobile search results. What we want, one thing I wanted to say is that this domain that you see here is only part of the preview mode. Once the site, the AMP site, will be set up, it will be the domain of your site that will show up. So what we're interested in here is to see that the page really loads as fast as we expect it to. So let's click on home. And it indeed opened as fast as we saw in the clip before. We can use this tool ourselves, and we can also show it to our customers as their first-hand experience with AMPs, for them to see how fast it is. So I'm going back to the dashboard. If we've seen that everything works and looks and everything is okay, we can hit approve. And once we click approve, we'll go back to the dashboard and the status has changed to live. That means that this page is now live, is being associated with the HTML version of the page. You should know that the Google does take time to pick up on that new version. So only in a few days' time will it start showing up in the mobile search results. Excuse me. I want to go over one more page, which is very similar to the previous one. The only difference is that we have a prompt here letting us know that we have found a third-party script in the page. So what we are being asked for is to scroll into view and review that the page or the element performs or looks as expected, as it would in the original HTML page. If everything works as expected, and in this case it does, we can click approve. And once clicking approve, once clicking approve, the option to approve the page will open up. If, however, this element does not look or behaves as expected as it would be in the HTML version, we have the option to click discard. And that means that this element will not be part of the AMP page, but it will continue, obviously, to be part of all the other pages of the site, as well as the HTML version of this page. It is only the AMP version where this element will not show up. So those are prompts that you are likely to see from time to time if you use third-party components. So that's approved in this case. And again, this page also switches to live. And those are the main things that you are expected to do when you set up your AMP site. One thing I wanted to explain is about the difference between the main pages and the blog posts part. And that is that blog posts have an option to automatically create an AMP version for new posts. And that means that if you or the site owner publishes a new blog post, it will automatically get an AMP version without you having to manually log into the dashboard and manually approve it. Another point I wanted, before I'm going to talk about those other points, this is the setup of the AMP page. This is something that you need to do once, and following that setup, your AMP pages will start going live within a few days. And over the course of the next few weeks, Google will start measuring them, and you'll see the results starting to be visible in the Search Console and, of course, in the search results themselves. You won't be required to log back into this dashboard too often. And the reason is that those AMP pages are dynamic. Whenever you make a change to your site, to your page, they automatically adapt themselves. They sync to the change that took place. Also, if something will require your attention, we will send you an email letting you know about that. And in this regard, you should make sure that the email that is listed in the account tab is indeed the email through which we are supposed to reach out to you. Another point that I wanted to say is that if you install the app on a website which is not yet published, you will see a message that's letting you know that once the page will be published, you'll be able to do this setup. It's a requirement of the application. And the last thing before going back to the presentation is the guides tab. I encourage you to use it. It has many useful resources. If you search for something, you can use the search element. And if you want to reach out to us, you can go there to the Contact Us tab and simply ask anything. We are very responsive. Second. So going back to the presentation, the last thing we want to show you is the plans that we offer. Everybody gets a free trial of 30 days full functionality. Following those 30 days, you will be asked to choose one of 3 plans, Basic, Plus, and Pro. And those plans differ based on the number of AMP pages they support, up to 5, up to 15, and up to 100 AMP pages. We're talking about live AMP pages. So even if you have 5,000 web pages on your site and you have only amplified 5 of them, you are eligible for the basic plan. In addition, we also support multi-language in the Plus and Pro plans, and those plans will also support product pages coming up. Lastly, for those of you that have more than 100 AMP pages, we will soon, within a few days, add another plan to accommodate that requirement. Okay, so that's it. Everett,
thank you.
I'm handing it back to you. Thank you very much for your time.
Of course, no,
thank
you for all the information. We have a few questions here, a couple questions. But before we jump into that, just kind of want to summarize what we talked about today. It was a lot of interesting information we learned. First, we talked about the AMP framework, created by Google to allow you to easily produce or somewhat easily produce accelerated mobile pages. to increase speed for mobile users, keep them engaged more quickly as they visit your site. Ampify has leveraged this framework through a programmatic engine that they're using that basically will scan a Duda site, notice widgets, notice elements, and then transpose those into the Ampify version. And so it's a very powerful app to provide mobile users with a very quick experience that today Duda doesn't compete with. As you saw with the HTML version, we do optimize for core vitals, we do cache across CDNs, and we do lazy loading and things like that. But we can't really come close to the preloaded cached version that Google produces through Ampify sites. So it's a very powerful tool to get up and running with AMP and to also provide a pretty unmatched mobile experience.
Yeah.
Cool. Omer, one thing that we got a question about was the marketing materials, and we have been collaborating on that. I think we'll have that out, relatively soon, probably by the end of the month, and we can go ahead and share those with some of you guys if folks want to use those to sell their clients.
We got some requests about that, and we need to provide it as soon as possible.
Cool. Next question is, will the image slider widget get a new working AMP widget as the arrow buttons are not working?
If something is not working for you, please let us know. Everything is supposed to be working. If an arrow button doesn't work, it shouldn't happen. Okay, so let us know, please.
Awesome. Yeah, I think a little bit kind of going deeper into that is what Ampify is doing is manually translating widgets that Duda has created into AMP components. And so since it's a manual process, right, there may be some things that could be optimized or fixed. So definitely reach out to Omer and the Ampify folks to get that resolved and support built out.
Just to clarify about this last point, it's not as if we're actually going over each and every carousel manually. It's our algorithm that does it using instructions which are dedicated for the Duda platform and elements.
Cool. Yeah, I should have said extended instructions. Yeah. Awesome. Does Google Analytics work for AMP sites?
Yeah, it does. It does. Not only them, but also the analytics shown in the Duda platform itself. There are caveats for that, and all the information about the support of Google Analytics, which versions and how are they being supported, are available in a tab, Analytics, in the guides section. It's a vast subject, nearly as much as AMP is a vast subject. So I won't explain all the fine details here, but yeah, Google Analytics is supported, and it is associated automatically with your existing Google Analytics account. So it's as if it is the same webpage.
Awesome. I'll take this next question. They're asking if Ampify works with flex pages. So yes, we recently released a new design experience within the Duda platform that allows you to drag and drop components and different design elements without using our column and row system. We're going to be working with the Ampify guys to go ahead and get them to and support them building support for the new flex design experience.
So actually, I'll update you that it is supported actually, and you can use that on flex pages just like you would on other sites.
Oh, awesome. Wow. Okay.
Nice surprise, right?
End of the game. Yeah. Wow. Cool. Awesome. Are the plans per site or per page? So if the $7 plan gives you 5 AMP pages, can I have 2 on one site and 3 on another? Or is it planned for a single site only? I will take that. An Ampify installation is per site. So if you purchase the 5-page plan, that's specific to that specific site. If you purchase the 100-page site, that's specific to the installation that you did on this specific site there. You'll need to purchase one plan for each site. Yeah.
Yeah.
I may have missed it, but is Google Analytics required, or does Duda Analytics work okay?
Both of them work. And you know, there are caveats and there are things that you need to better understand if you work with Google Analytics, and everything is explained in the guides tab.
Awesome. Multi-language sites are supported, but does that impact the number of pages? The home page in English and Spanish, does that count as 2 pages?
No, it counts as 1 page. So you can have as many languages as you have. If you only, it all counts as 1.
Awesome, awesome. I was a little late. Maybe this was covered. Does custom JavaScript work on AMP sites?
Custom JavaScripts have limited support in AMP. The reason is that AMP pages have to be comprised of AMP compliant elements, or they won't be AMP valid, as we saw in the page before. So some of the custom JavaScripts will work without a hitch, and some of them will not work. And this is why we enable you to control if you want to have a custom JavaScript element be visible in the AMP version of the page. And whenever you approach this question, if you have a custom JavaScript, you need to make a decision. Are you okay with that element not showing up in the AMP version of the page in favor of all the AMP benefits, and knowing that it does continue to show up on all the other pages of the site, as well as the HTML version of that same web page? Most times people are okay with that because they gain so much from the AMP. But if not, then you think maybe you should skip on amplifying that page. But if you're okay with that, you can feel free to go ahead and amplify the page.
Cool, cool. Do you plan on another menu system than hamburger icon? I read that Google prefers a system with finger move up. I think that's a question targeted more towards Duda. Terry, are you saying on mobile devices, kind of swiping from the right to expose a menu opposed to having a button? Is that what you're referencing?
I think he means from the bottom.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I don't believe we support that today, and I'm not sure if we have any plans to support that in the future. Of course, you could get around this using some custom JavaScript, some custom HTML elements, going into developer mode on your site. Could build this out yourself. But yeah, we don't have plans right now to implement that. Yeah, from bottom. Yeah, so in theory, yeah, like I said, you could do it yourself, but we have no plans to do it natively in the platform as of yet. Cool. When hiding an element on mobile, the Amplify page still caches the content and wasted limited space. Can this be fixed?
If you have a specific issue, let us know and we'll look into it, because when a page is discarded in the AMP version, is hidden in the AMP version, it shouldn't be visible in the AMP page. So if you see it, please let us know and we'll look into it. But you're right, the less exists on the AMP page, the faster it loads, even though the preloading of the AMP pages really compensates even for those small bits of extra bytes of the elements that are hidden in this case.
Cool. We've reached the end of the question list here. We'll give folks a couple more minutes to send in any additional questions.
Sure.
One question from mine, just to kind of spark the conversation, Omer, we've talked about this, a couple of times, is how does Amplify fare with other apps in the Duda App Store? How do you guys, how does it support it? Those elements and things like that.
Yeah. So other apps are considered as custom or third-party elements on the site itself. Like custom HTML, they require your approval to see if everything works and behaves as expected. We don't have custom support yet for those third-party apps, so you might experience issues with them in that case. But we did accommodate them in order for them to not interfere with the user experience. But the same question you need to ask yourself: am I okay with a specific element not showing up in the AMP version in favor of all the benefits it brings about? If you're okay with that, then everything should work as expected. I should also point out that we're soon adding additional functionalities, which will give you much more freedom in regards to how you handle those custom HTML, so custom scripts elements.
Awesome. Yeah, and just as an example, for those folks who use Visita or any other kind of app that embeds a site-wide, kind of floating button or something like that, you may see those not function on the Ampify site or on the, the preview screen. So like Omer said, go in, discard those before you approve the site, or just go ahead and skip it if you want to support that functionality on mobile devices.
Yeah, many times we already handle it before it's even been reached for you to manually make a decision regarding them. I should also point out that many third-party components already have built-in AMP support. And again, we'll add the functionalities required to turn on that support in the AMP pages. So if you have a widget of chat, for example, that has a built-in AMP support, which the company itself, the third-party provider itself, have created, then you can continue having that functionality in the AMP version itself. And that's something that we plan on adding very soon.
Awesome. Question here, I missed the presentation. When will the replay be available? I believe we will send that out either by end of day today or tomorrow. So yeah, tomorrow at the latest. Cool. Those were all of the questions.
Great.
Omer, appreciate you coming on and explaining AMP and showing the Ampify app. It was awesome.
Thank you very much. And again, for any question, anything that you need to understand about AMP or how Ampify is working on your site, or how to make it work on a large number of the sites that you're working with, reach out to us. You can do it by email. You can do it through the application itself. We're here. We're very responsive.
Awesome. And we have one last question trickling in here. AMP pages can only have a limited amount of widgets on the page. Do widgets that are hidden via Duda contribute to the limit?
No, they're not. They're not, just like I'm linking to the previous question, hidden elements are not supposed to be part of the AMP page. So they're not contributing to that.
Awesome. Cool. And with that, thanks, guys. Appreciate everyone joining us today to learn more about Ampify and understand the AMP framework. If there are no last minute questions here, we're going to go ahead and just end the webinar. So thanks again, guys. Thanks, Omer, and have a great day.